live discussion where we're going to talk about The Boys, the new Amazon Prime show. We're going to talk about season 1. This will be a spoiler-free discussion for the first part of it. So if you haven't seen The Boys to begin with, if you're starting to stream now and you haven't seen The Boys, you can stick around because we won't give away too many spoilers. We might get a little light into the soft spoilers, nothing that, stuff that the trailer gave away, stuff that happened at the start of the season. But we're going to wait till the end of the broadcast and we'll make an announcement. We're going to talk about spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show, that's your cue to take off and go watch it before you watch the rest of the stream. But anyway, I'm joined here by a special guest to talk about The Boys. First, Darren from D's Reviews. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Mark, always a blast to do these chats with you, and really excited to get to jump into The Boys. I'm a huge Karl Urban fan, so I was excited he was coming back, and I got to say, neither he nor the show disappointed at all. Really excited about this season and cannot wait for the next already.
Cool, and also joining us, Don Willie, once again. Don, thanks so much for joining us for this one.
Thank you, as always, for having me, Mark. Darren, what's going on, man? The boys. Great first season. Lots of action. Very great story. Let's talk about it.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the show. I guess we'll talk a bit about the premise if you haven't heard about it. For me, I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of The Watchmen. Put that out there. I'd never read the comics, so that's probably why. I heard the comics was much, much better than the movie, but I didn't like the movie. I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder. Sorry, Don. I'm just just not. And I didn't like The Watchmen. And to me, this show is everything that The Watchmen wasn't. Like, this is what I wanted out of The Watchmen. This was the fucked up side of superhero. So basically, the premise of the show, if you haven't heard, it's and taking place in the universe that has superheroes, except these superheroes are some people would describe them as a bit more realistic. It shows what would happen if corporatized culture sort of took over the superhero business, and so it's all about making money, and so the superheroes there's a lot of corruption. A lot of corruption in the superheroes and in the corporate entities that make money off the superheroes. So it's a very corrupt industry, and so you get some crime, you get some people dying and stuff. So there's a group of vigilantes, as we call them. I'm still unclear if Karl Urban was actually an authority. I think at one point he was involved in law enforcement, but I don't know if he still is. But it's basically a group of vigilantes that get together to try to put an end to the superheroes' tyranny, which is a nice little spin on the whole superhero genre. And to me, I like the message that it has about corporate America and about corruption, and it takes a very, very cynical. That's why I compare it to The Watchmen, because The Watchmen also took a very cynical view on superheroes. But I think, to me, this resonates more. I think part of the reason, particularly with the Watchmen movie, is that it was based off a comic that came out in the 80s, so it was a bit outdated. Like, it had an alternate reality with Nixon. And I'm sick of stuff they're doing with Nixon. Like, I was sick of seeing the head of Nixon in Futurama and stuff. And so I couldn't really relate to it. But with The Boys, it seems focused on a modern audience, and it seems to have taken the modern culture more into account to what if superheroes are real, and this is how fucking corrupt and messed up it would be. But anyway, Don, let's start with you. What are some of your thoughts on The Boys?
Well, look, I like the way that you have, the two central characters, one actually getting their first taste of jumping into the superhero world and seeing for themselves like, hey, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm stepping into the glitz and the glamour of it all, but like the behind the scenes stuff that the average person doesn't get to see. That's where it's like, oh, wait, this is what we're doing? Okay, then. And then you have a civilian on the ground who, like I guess most consumers is kind of bought into the world and how things happen until a tragedy strikes and then realizes like, oh, these so-called heroes maybe aren't the people that we should be looking up to, and he has to take matters into his own hands. And I like the fact that you know while while there's no black and white, you sometimes don't know who the hero or the villain of the story is. And that's one thing that I really liked about it, because you have bad people who do good things, good people who do bad things, and then the two protagonists of the story are kind of somewhere in the middle of it all, and you're trying to figure out like how much of it is them driving their narrative versus someone else actually thrusting a narrative upon them. So that's the thing that I really loved about it.
Cool. And Darren, what's your thoughts on the boys?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, you guys watch any of my reviews and such. I am a huge superhero fan, so there was a kind of extra level of joy diving into this, because I mean, kind of like you, Mark. I'm not a huge Watchmen fan. I appreciate it for sure. I know exactly the impact that I'd had. But I wasn't reading it back at the time when it originally came out. I got familiar with it later on. And yeah, sort of being out of time, out of sync, it doesn't sort of resonate the exact same way as it probably did when it originally came out. This, is definitely set in present day, and I think even builds more so upon the current superhero world that we are living in now, where it is all Marvel. DC tried to do a little darker edge, but even in then, there was a certain, heroic viewpoint of the struggle of the superhero. And this takes it and really puts it right up on an edge, where in many ways you find out, well, it's the old adage, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So in this way, we start to see that those that we revere as our heroes are in many ways actually super villains who maybe just haven't broken out, into full-on mustache twirling mode. But still, it's kind of set up for that background. So I kind of like the idea of where this might be going. Are the villains going to be just disguised as heroes in the front? Is there going to be some split later on? But the whole idea of humanity being the victim of a careless group of individuals that are there for fame and fortune and branding and marketing purposes, and don't care so much about the damage they leave in their wake, is I think it's a great way to dive into the whole concept again, especially since we're in the big superhero mode. Let's look at it over on the consequence side, where things can get really, really dark.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with what Don was saying earlier about how it blurs the line between good and evil. And I would actually go as far as to say is there are no real heroes or villains in the show. Like they're characters that the society believes are heroes and characters society thinks are villains, but are they really? Like it really blurs the line between that, and that's what I think makes it really unique as far as superhero shows. Now I want to talk a little bit about sort of the edgy feel of it, because I'm actually, unlike Darren, I'm not a huge fan of like comic book movies, comic book shows. I have gotten into some of them, but I'm not like, I got anything comic book oriented, I'm on board. But so I wasn't really going to watch the show at first, but the more trailers I saw for it, the more I was like, I gotta give this a shot, because the trailer that shows Carl Urban, and this isn't a trailer, so it's not a spoiler. That shows Carl Urban holding a baby, shooting laser from his eyes, like killing people. I'm like, and he's like, that's diabolical, and I'm like, holy shit, what the hell is going on here? And I wanted to find out if the show was really that like out there and crazy, and some might call it satirical because it gets a bit like over the top with its like goriness, and it doesn't hold back. That's what I love about Amazon. If this is on, this could never be on a network show, because some of the like gore and stuff that happens is way over the top, and I did really appreciate it, but I never found it too much because it was spread out over 10 episodes. Like if they had that much gore in one episode, it would be overloaded, and that's kind of what I thought The Watchmen was. Whereas this, I thought it was more nicely paced and spread out. Darren, what was some of your thoughts on that?
To me, really, the structure of the show I thought played into it really well, because they give you, you're right. I mean, it never gets too much. They give you tastes of things. They give you tastes of bit. And I think it's good. One way, it doesn't overload you as in the audience, but I think also just from a pure production standpoint, it allows them to tell a bigger story without always burdening these heavy costs of special effects shots and things like this. They can imply stuff. They can put one small thing into it and allow that to play a really big part of the story. But like I said, to me, the pacing is what really, I think, even starting from the first episode, and I want to touch on this without trying to get into too much spoiler territory. So give me a shout if I seem to start diving too off to. But they start things off giving you two sides of the story constantly. You know, they give you the big heroic opening of what you expect to see heroes playing, and then they show the tragic consequences of also that. Then they give you the heroic image of walking into that world and being part and having your dreams fulfilled, and then giving you the nightmarish shot of just the darkness and the selfishness and the personalities that you're running into. You know, you get the big heroic entrance of Karl Urban, which is just awesome. He's the idea of the heroic, the guy that's going to play it out right. They give him that beautiful shot walking in through the city and panning around to all of the sponsors and everything like that, saying this is the world that we're in, and this is what we have to stand against. And then by the end, you end up seeing is how empty some of his platitudes are. You get some of the heroic stuff, and then you see how really, I mean, by the end of the episode, even the ones that you thought were going to be at a certain level end up being twisted and seeing the dark side. So it's just a beautiful way of setting up all of these moments and really sucking you in by showing that dichotomy. And then it takes time. Your next character is introduced in one whole episode. Then they wait to the whole next episode to introduce the next character. And they take their time in building the world once they set it up. And I think that pacing really pays off so beautifully by the end, because nothing feels overly rushed, but you get so much within every episode.
Cool, Don. So, you have any thoughts on the tone of the show, or if you thought it was ever over the top, or if it was perfectly paced, or whatnot?
I think, look, given the fact that we only got like 8 episodes, I think they did a lot of. I thought they did very well with the pacing, because, like, the episodes are more or less an hour each, and it didn't feel like an hour. It didn't feel like an hour, but you got so much information in each episode. And that was the thing that I really loved about it, because, while a lot of things, you get a lot of shows who are like, okay, we got to pad the runtime, and they'll start throwing in a bunch of filler stuff. I didn't really feel like there was any filler in here. And that's the thing that I loved about it. Like the story moved, when it needed to slow down, it slowed down. But when it did, it was because there was something important that you needed to see that was going to come back later. It was like, okay, yeah, we needed that scene of these two characters talking, because that sets up something for maybe like 2 or 3 episodes later, and it's like brilliant. So I love the pacing of the show. I think the tone is probably the thing that grabbed me the most, because it takes kind of the world that we live in real life, and especially with the consumer culture surrounding superheroes, where people are going out and they're buying hats and t-shirts and mugs and all this other stuff with heroes logos and faces on them, and collectibles. And it's like, okay, yeah, you went to go see Homelander the movie. Do you really know anything about the actual Homelander? And I'd love to see them dive more, if they do happen to do this. I'd love to see them dive more next season into, like, are these movies a fictionalized version of the actual exploits, or are these supposed to be more documentaries? Because that's the thing too. Like, geez, if I can make hundreds of millions of dollars or $1 billion off a documentary as a superhero, yeah, I'd probably be like these guys too. So yeah, man. I don't know. I got nothing bad right now. Maybe I might come up with something later, but
I do, but I'm gonna save that for a bit. I wanted to address what you just said about the super. And from my impression of what I saw in the show is that the movies were meant to be like big fictional blockbusters, like Marvel movies, basically. Except the difference is it's actually based off of real people. But you can tell that's like pretty much entirely fiction. And what was also interesting, and I think I can say this in spoiler-free section, is that they didn't have documentaries, but they had propaganda pieces, like pieces that the corporate would arrange, and they would totally just sell an image that may or may not actually be the case, which I thought was that's all details like that made it really true to reality and felt really something that was more tangible. It's almost, some people describe it as more like feeling more realistic than actual like Marvel movies or DC movies, but I don't know what your thoughts on that, Darren, was.
Well, yeah, because again, it's looking at it through that sort of cynical, branded, corporate, merchandise edge, where if these things are being bought and basically being sold to society, in some ways it's like, are there heroes just to sell? Kind of like today or recently was like the 36th anniversary of He-Man coming out. And I remember when He-Man came out as a kid, He-Man was one of those very obvious ploy, this is a cartoon that is designed to sell toys. And I think that the Boys kind of deals in that particular world where are these superheroes that are, brought forth into society, or they built up by the corporation to sell the merchandise that they're going on later on. Where does the intention to be a superhero end and the intention to sell it out begin? And I think they really do play with that line very nicely. Again, it's hard to get into some of the specifics without jumping really into spoiler territory and stuff. But I think they do blend that line very well. Is where does the image end and where does the real person begin, and how much is that how deep does that fake actually dwell?
Yeah. Now to bring up one of my, don't get me wrong, I love the show. Overall, I think it was amazing. I was blown away by it. But I do have some slight things that I and I think the biggest one to me is that the show is called The Boys, but it didn't seem like they explored the boys enough. It seems like it was more about the Seven. It was more about like all the characters in the Seven, even the ones that don't appear that much. Well, except for that one guy who never talks, but the rest of them, like, they're really well developed, like, and I really got a hold of them. Whereas the characters of the Boys, which is the vigilante group, other than Hugh and maybe Carl Urban's character, I didn't really feel like I got a grasp of them, at least not at first. They got developed later on as the show went on, but it did make me feel kind of like they weren't focused on them enough, where it seems like the show should be more about them. I don't know if you guys have any response to that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think that they had spent some time introducing those characters. I mean, like I said, you're starting out with your main, you've got Huey's story, and you're introducing Billy Butcher, and that's, kind of your opening episode, and then they bring in another character in the following episode, and you kind of just spend that whole episode meeting them. And then they bring in another character, the next episode, and we take some time meeting them. So I think they do sort of flesh those out, but it's done differently because I think the initial sell point is, you want to get into the world, you want to get into the heroes, you want to get into the Seven. Plus, there is a point of view being told, inside that story as well. And I think that from a, we're talking about marketing and selling and falsifying and everything. And I think from a marketing standpoint of selling it, you have to introduce the big characters and then you bring in our people bit by bit as they're needed, like the Mission Impossible. Okay, man, we're going to need the mechanic here. Go get the mechanic. Okay, we're going to need the gun guy. Okay, we got to go get the gun guy. I think they take some time with that. So, yeah, I mean, I felt they were reasonably built out, but I do understand because they spread out the storytelling where it might feel that wasn't dived in as deeply as it could be.
Well, and I'll let you go soon, John, but I just want to say real quick is that I think what got me is that it seemed like I would have liked to see the formation of the boys, where it seemed like Karl Urban already knew these two other characters who joined the boys, and it seemed like, oh, I know this guy, and I guess the French guy that did, was he called Frenchie? I believe.
Yeah, Frenchie and Mother's Milk.
Yeah, Mother's Milk. I think is the one who wasn't developed much at all. It wasn't until the finale where I finally kind of got a hold of him, but still I think they could have done a much better job of introducing him, just my opinion. It just seems like, oh, it's like a shorthand. This is someone I already know, and there's like they have the shorthand behind them where as a viewer I felt lost. I would have liked to see. I mean, they don't have to meet for the first time on screen, but I would have liked to see more introduction. That was just my saying.
Well, I think there's the whole thing that there's their backstory and the incident that might have split them up, which they refer to kind of constantly through the show. That might be something they saved in season 2 to get that intro. That you're right would be a little bit more sensing if we had the group coming together and we got to do that kind of origin story bit of them. Where isn't we got Huey's origin and then we sort of like got thrown in with everyone else. So I see where you're coming from with that. Don.
All right. So, look, I get what you were saying, Mark, about the intros to like some of the more side characters. You thought there was going to be a little more focus on the 7. Look, but
more focus on the boys. I thought there was plenty of focus on the 7. But
well, I mean, in terms of like maybe more characterization, because I mean there isn't like Black Noir we still know nothing about, right? Homelander we did get kind of glimpses into his past, but I mean like I guess enough that you can put stuff together. The Deep, again, not much on like as far as backstory, but we got his personality. And then Queen Maeve, again, still not much on the backstory. I mean, there's still a lot about the 7 that we don't know. And as far as the boys are concerned, yeah, there's a lot as far as the incident that split up the group and everything that we need to learn about. And I think that the ending of season 1 is going to be the thing that kind of leads into them telling the story of like how they got there to where they broke up the team and sent Butcher on his quest for vengeance, or heightened his quest.
Be careful there, Don.
I mean, listen, no, I'm not getting into spoilers. I mean,
yeah.
I think the writing is already kind of on the wall in the trailers with that. So, but I think that like the end of season 1, when we talk about it in the spoiler section, I think that you'll be able to kind of see the reason why we didn't really get much backstory as far as the formation of the group. I think that the ending of season 1 is the thing that's going to show like or like what I'm thinking they should be springboarding off of that would be the thing that kind of rolls the clock back and it's like, oh, well, this is why this thing led to this thing, which led to this thing, which led to Billy Butcher's quest, so to speak.
Yeah, and I do get what you're saying. It's possible that I will feel better about this when season 2 comes along, and I'll be like, oh, so that's why they paced it that way. But at the moment, I haven't seen season 2, so I only have season 1 to go off. And like I said, I still love the show. It's a minor complaint. But the other minor little thing I would say is I slightly have a different take, because you said earlier that you didn't think there was any filler, and I'll agree with you as far as episode goes. Like almost all shows, even the best shows, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, what have you, will have entire episodes that's just like Walking Dead is pretty much comprised only of this now, but we'll have entire episodes that are just filler, and the whole episode is pointless and useless, and there were no episodes like that. And part of the reason for that is having the 8 episodes, a short season arc, really helps with that. But there are sometimes, particularly towards the end of the season, where I felt it dragged a bit, and that's probably my own expectation of. I wanted them to get further along the story by the end of season 1. They ended at a place, spoiler free, they ended at a place that was too open-ended for what I was expecting. But again, this is another thing that could be alleviated by season 2. Once the season 2 comes out, I could see it and be like, okay, so that's why they had to pace it that way. But for just my personal, and I'll get more into details in the spoiler section, but there was a lot of things towards the end of the season I thought like they were kind of this, maybe just not too much, but just a little wheel spinning going on where I want them to go more forward.
Yeah. Oh, and just want to throw in one thing. Cardinal Doomsday in the chat did bring up that we are seeing this story evolve out from Huey's point of view. So the fact that he's being thrust in the middle of this story does sort of explain also why we may not be getting so much backstory on everyone else. And that may be what we're all feeling is probably something they're going to dive into a bit more into season 2. But as I said, I mean, it worked to a certain degree, I think. For me, it worked.
Cool. So Don, do you have any thoughts on if you thought my comments about the wheel spinning, about the pacing, or?
Like I can see where you're coming from. But I just personally, I think it might have been just a little setup. I mean, because honestly speaking, the ending, I do admit the ending was a little abrupt. But it was one of those things where it left me wanting more.
Yes, that is definitely for sure.
And had they given even just one more episode, it might have been anticlimactic. So I think they did the right thing to just reel you in and just hook you right there, so you'd be like, wait, no, wait, there's no more to this. You're sitting there, fast forwarding on your computer or on
yeah.
your
No. But, yeah. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with this, but I do think that kind of like ending the season at a huge cliffhanger like that does seem to me to be more of a throwback to like more 90s shows, that in more modern era the seasons tend to wrap up a bit more. I mean, they may leave it a bit open-ended, but there tends to be a bit more closure than that. But as I said, there's nothing wrong with it. That's probably just why I wasn't expecting it, because most modern shows wouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, but in some ways it's a perfect cliffhanger, because I mean, again, I don't know if it wrapped up so much of one particular story. I guess if you could just say the introduction, but it's definitely it's definitely one of those cliffhangers where you go, yeah, that's obviously where you start part 2 of the story, because there's going to be a whole, there's fallout and consequences and things like that, and. You can there's multiple directions that you can take that at that point. Some more heroic and some more villainous, which again is sort of what the show sort of deals with. But yeah, I think in that sense, you're right, Don. If there had been one more episode after this, that would have felt anticlimactic. I think it does, but while it may not properly wrap up a first season storyline, I think it's definitely the beginning of a whole new storyline.
I think. Maybe it's a possibility it could be anticlimactic. I think it's a possibility it could have actually been better. But I will trust the showrunners that they know what they're doing until I see season 2. And hopefully I won't be like, oh, what? They shouldn't have ended it there. But hopefully it would be like, oh, okay, I see why they ended it there. Okay, so we're kind of bumping up against spoilers a lot, and we've been going for a half hour with spoiler free. So, are you guys ready to get into the spoiler section, or do you have any more thoughts? Yeah.
No, we can go ahead. I mean,
All
again,
right.
if you haven't watched it, pause this, go watch it, then come back and we'll dive in and do a little bit more. But it is worth the time. And like I said, if by the first episode it hasn't grabbed you, then yeah, it's not a show for you. I think for the first episode sets that up really nice.
Actually, before we end the spoiler free section, why don't we go ahead and give our rating on the show for those who maybe haven't seen the show yet? Rating 1 out of 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. What would you give the show? I'll start with you first, Don. What is your rating out of 10 for The Boys season 1?
The Boys season 1. I'm going to give it a 9.5. I know that might be very, very high praise, but I mean, like, I haven't been excited for a show like this in a very long time, especially because it subverted expectations. So, yeah, 9.5 for me for season 1 of The Boys.
All right. Darren.
Yeah, I don't know your 0.5 stuff. I'm an integer guy myself, man. Strict numbers. But no, I was looking at 9 also. I mean, I try to reserve 10 for something that's amazing, blown away, and this almost is it. You're right. There might be a couple of little points where thought they could have gone, but I'm only reserving that just so I don't spoil what a 10 actually is. But it's worth it. Like I said, I rewatched it again. I enjoyed every moment of the rewatch. I got more out of it. The cast is really good. The storyline got me. Some of the actors I wasn't entirely sure with, but as time went on, I really was like, no, I want to see what's going on with them and their part of the story. And that is an awesome job right there. If you can take someone that I'm not familiar with and make me want to know more about them. And that show and the show really did it. I think it's a phenomenal production. It's completely worth your time. So.
Yeah, and I pretty much are going to be on par with Darren there. So I don't like to do the 0.5 or point integrals. I like to stick with the strict numbers, and I'm almost going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's thinking about a 10, but yeah, as I said, it's not quite up to the level of 10, but it's almost there. It's definitely a 9. I was really blown away by it. As I said, I had some few minor complaints, but really in the grand scheme of things, I was super impressed with the show. I think for me, if you know my channel, you know my taste, I really gravitate towards character stories. And I like the balance between the character. They had strong characters. I do think the boys could have been developed a bit more, but the 7, they did an amazing job. The main characters, they did an amazing job of developing them. So they had strong characters. They had a great balance between the over-the-top goriness or the over-the-top satire and the comedy and the seriousness. Like, there's some moments we're about to get into when we get to the spoiler section of drama that it was just like some of the most powerful scenes that I've ever seen. Yeah, so I'll give this a 9 out of 10, and I would recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it to go and watch it. I thought there was something else I wanted to say before I go, but it's slipping my mind. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead. I'll probably think of it later, but anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get into the spoiler section now. So spoilers. If you haven't seen all of season 1 up to the very end, then you probably want to stop this now and then come back and watch it in the archives later once you have seen all of season 1 of The Boys. Cool. So let's get spoilers. So let's start with specific scenes. Are there any specific scenes that really stood out to you? Who, Don or Darren, whichever one of you wants to go first?
Done.
All right, so yeah, I will say Homelander, who easily my favorite of the show. Basically, him coming to the realization that that he might have had a child in the world, and it actually took me watching someone else's review of the series to, because I'm not sure what it was like at that time. I must have zoned out and didn't realize that and I forgot what the lady's name was, but that she told him a different story than the doctor. Like I didn't get that at first, and in fact, you know what it was? It was watching Fandom D Saints reaction, and he's in the chat room right now. So shout out to you. Yeah, because if it wasn't for him saying, "Hey, wait, no, that's not the story," he was told, like, holy shit, that was right. I didn't even realize that. So yeah, him like sitting, like with his head on her lap and listening to the story, and you see like the look on his face as he comes to the realization, like, oh, I've been lied to. And then later on, when he basically confronts her about it and was like, yeah, I went back and talked to the doctor and got the story again. So I know what the truth is now. I was like, look, Homelander is a dick. He is despicable, but he is my favorite character because he is, Superman, Steve Rogers, kind of, but like with just more of a, I guess, a real world corporatized edge to him, and that's the thing I love about him. So,
yeah. Now, you tell me, did anybody else get the impression that they really wanted Chris Pine to play Homelander? Was available, and they got this guy who did an amazing job. I'm not discounting him, but so often I saw him turn, and I'm like, God, he looks just like Chris Pine.
I can definitely see that.
I think this guy's got a bit beefier.
Oh yeah, for sure, and he did an amazing job. I'm not discounting. I'm just acknowledging it was just like even the
discount Chris Pine.
He did have a like a Captain Kirk-esque vibe to him a little bit. The Chris Pine Kirk. There was a little bit of that in there, and there was a little bit of Steve Trevor from Wonder Woman in there as well.
See, I'm going to be as bold to say that I don't think I like this guy better than Chris Pine. I think this guy would have been doing a better job than Chris Pine. Just, I don't know. Maybe I'm deluded because
no.
Not that. Again, I don't want to discount, what he brought to the role. I'm just saying from a look that seemed to be like the look that they were looking for with this character. Well, I'll jump in then.
But just real quick, I wanted to say that the character you were thinking of, Don, was Madeline Stillwell.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway. There.
I think one of the biggest is like of the second scene, how I talked about they give you the heroic edge. They did the opening with that beautiful Queen Maeve destroying the armored car or whatever that was in the chase right there. I mean, again, there was this great, beautiful, heroic bit. But come on, the follow-up, the counter to that when Huey loses Robin was just I mean, it was so impactful. I think because we saw that heroic bit in the beginning and now and they did it perfectly right in the middle of a conversation and she's just gone. And then and he has the full reaction and then sees the hands and the disbelief. And I mean Quaid, the guy who plays Huey, Jack Quaid, just owned that moment right there of just that whole panic and realization and anger. And I mean, everything was all right there. And I think that set the pace of the show, that set the tone of the show so perfectly, especially the pan over at A-Train is just like, I can't stop, and just goes like he cares nothing about what he just did. I think that was an awesome opening sequence. And again, I'm still thinking about it.
Well, I gotta ask you guys, because the moment where Huey's girlfriend is ripped apart by A-Train, that was in one of the trailers, and I saw that several times before I actually watched the show. Did you guys see that in the trailers, or did you see it for the first time when watching the show?
I did not catch that from the trailers. I think I just saw the first kind of opening bit with like the baby head and the stuff. That's diabolical. When you got the baby, man. Oh, that would be a pretty close second, I think. But no, I didn't catch that. So it was one of those where I wasn't sure if I was going to dive in, but I wanted to be as fresh as possible. And I think after the first preview, I didn't need to see anymore.
I saw. It seems like Amazon's been advertising their shows very heavily, because there's a couple of shows where I just seen crap ton of trailers for it. So I saw like all kinds of trailers, and to be honest, that probably helped me watch the show. So I have mixed feelings about them spoiling that in the trailer, because on the one hand, I do feel it lessened the impact for me, like, because I already knew damn well that was going to happen. But on the other hand, it really was a nice drive for me to watch the show. Like, I don't know, like, if going by the other trailers, I wouldn't have been as motivated, because it makes it clear how crazy off the fucking walls and just how dark the show can be.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I don't really remember watching the trailers too much. Like, I remember hearing about it, I remember seeing the little banner that they put on Amazon Prime, but actually watching trailers, I'm not sure I actually watched any trailers.
Okay.
I got to be pleasantly surprised. I knew Carl Urban was in it, and I was already like, oh, okay, Carl Urban's here. It's got to be good.
Yeah, that was me too. But I would say that I would actually be a little disappointed if, seeing that in a trailer first, because, yeah, while it might be shocking and grab you to pull in, I think that's such an impactful scene. It's like giving away the first battle of an action, the James Bond film or something like that. It just, but well, I'm not in marketing. I'm a horrible marketing person, so I wouldn't be one to ask about that anyway.
All right, so I'll get into my favorite scene, and I think this is one of the most powerful scenes of any show I've seen in such a long time. I was just watching it just before it came on here, as the scene with the airplane. The scene where Homelander and Maeve go, and like that was like so dramatic, like that was so heartbreaking. Like, and I guess anything I was disappointed in, I was disappointed that we didn't follow up enough on Maeve's reaction to this. But I think that's coming in season 2. They're withholding a lot of that, because we did see some of her like going into a drunken stupor and stuff. But I think it might eventually lead her to actually turn on Homelander or do something and sort of open her eyes to things. So I think that's going to be more of a long-term story arc, so I'm willing to go with it. But that scene was so damn impactful, and it shows you the time just how fake Homelander is as a hero. It's just, I love the contrast of when he first shows up on the plane and they're cheering and like, "You're a Homelander." He's like, "Hey, I see you, buddy. How you doing, girl?" And then once they kill the pilot and the plane's crashing, there's nothing you can do about it. He's like, "Nah, fuck it, we're all fucked." He's like, "Oh, we're okay." And they're starting to tell something's up, and Maeve tries to save the 2 little girls, and they're like, "Please take my little girls with you." And he like starts like threatening to kill them with the laser eyes. God damn, that was, I think, one of the most intense scenes I've seen in a long time for any show.
I mean, if I may, real quick, I have to say, like, that was one of those things where I was like, wow. The fact that they went there with these characters, because we've never seen, at least that I can think of, we've never seen supposed superheroes act in that way, and the thing that I liked about it was the fact that was probably the most genuine that you're going to see out of someone who is a supposed superhero, because at the end of the day, yes, Homelander might be very powerful, Queen Maeve might be very powerful, but they know that they are still mortal. And they're like, look, we might be more durable than these people on this plane, but if we go down with the plane, we die. And obviously, yeah, that's messed up that he wouldn't even save the kids. But also think about the fact that Homelander still doesn't know how to control his powers correctly. he was the one that killed the pilot. Why? Because he didn't know how to control his powers, and not only did he kill the pilot, he also messed up the instrument panel.
Well, I will. I just watched the scene. He actually didn't kill the pilot.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Terrorist shot the pilot, but he fucked up the controls.
And that was the thing about it.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So he didn't kill the pilot, but he definitely wrecked the plane.
Yes.
And yeah, why? Because he doesn't fully have control over his powers the way that it's kind of like the public has no idea that really, yeah, he's semi in control. Like, yes, he knows how to fly and, and he's strong and all that. But when it comes to those laser beams, it's like, oh, okay. Oh, damn, I wasn't supposed to do that. And you notice throughout the series, there are a couple of instances where it's like, oh, he clearly overshot. Whether or not he realizes it or not is a totally different thing. But I'm like, oh, I like the fact that he is not fully in control. And he's, yeah, he kind of knows that he's a douchebag. And he's like, look, yeah, I have to put on the face for the public, but yeah, man, look, it is self-preservation over everything. And so it's like, imagine for real if Lex Luthor had Superman's powers, and here you go.
Yeah. Now, I've heard an interesting debate or interesting discussion, and I think I don't weigh in this either way. I think it's an interesting thing to ponder, is whether or not Homelander could have saved the plane, or did he just give up? Was he being truthful that he just couldn't have done it, or was he just being apathetic? And maybe if he actually tried and putting effort to it, he might have been able to save at least some people. But because he wanted to do all or nothing, he didn't even try and he gave up. And I think there's arguments that could be made either way, and I really like it about that, because you do make some good points, Don, about his not being in full control of his powers.
Yeah, and I'd never really thought about that so much as not being so much in control of his powers. To me, it was almost more of a callousness or carelessness on his part, that he is so willing to turn things around depending on the optics of it. But I think, like you said, the argument can go either way, because we don't know that much about Homelander's powers and the whole thing with flight, and could he fly and push up, and what is his source of movement, and can that counter the weight of a plane, or is it just enough for him? I mean, it was in the old 89 Batman, how much do you weigh? Because that's going to depend on how much Batline can pull you up. We don't really know that, but I think but again, I don't think that was the point of the scene, is whether or not he could actually save the aircraft. I think the whole point was exactly what you said, to show the whole callousness of us, the fact that he is a sociopath, that he doesn't care about anyone or anything about just how that it looks. And maybe he could save some people, but then it would look like it was his fault, that it was worse, that they shouldn't have sent him in, that it might reflect badly on him, and he'd rather sacrifice all of these lives to save his own image, especially how he's able to just callously turn it around at the end of the episode and just be like, these people, this will never happen to end, and I promise that it won't. I mean, he does the perfect
oh God, yeah.
and so much that Maeve is like, getting sick practically next to him with how little he can care about these lives that were just lost. And I think that's sort of the perfect thing. And to me, that lays in later on with the whole Believe Expo and his big speech there, which is the whole, now we're going to use this just to bolster up our own need. I mean, if there's something...
that was great.
There's a commentary on America, certain aspects and point of views that are wonderfully underlined. And I think that's something else the show does really well, is it poignantly hits on a lot of the issues that we are dealing with right now. And conflicts and questions, and to see what is the actual value of it, or is how much of that really BSing everyone just to sell you another package, whether it be a T-shirt, a coffee mug, or war. It's all a marketing package.
Yeah, cool. So I'm going to switch gears real quick, and I want to talk about some of our favorite character or a favorite character, just one so we don't go too far. I know Don, you already talked about Homelander, but I want to say Billy Butcher is probably my favorite character, just because I love Carl Urban so much. And I think Carl Urban, I mean, his over the topness, and you really got behind his character too, and that's what made the ending, the cliffhanger, so powerful, because you found out everything he thought he knew was totally wrong. But I just got a quick question. Oh, I don't think Carl Doomsday is here anymore, but he would have been able to answer this. They keep saying that he has a British accent, but it sounds like he's putting on an Australian accent. I know he's a New Zealand actor. I know that. But it doesn't seem like he's using his natural accent. I thought he was making it sound more Australian, because when people kept saying, oh, he's British, I'm like, he's not British, he's Australian. Was I the only one who thought that?
No, it sounded like more Australian than straight English. It was definitely that kind of a little rougher. To me, I always view Australian as kind of like the Texas version of English. It's like that little roughier, swarthier edge there. So no, he didn't sound particularly Kiwi. He didn't sound New Zealand to me so much. Yeah, definitely was thinking more Australian than English.
I mean, really, I'll be honest with you. To me, it sounded like South London. What do they call them? Cockney?
Oh, really? Okay, Cockney accent.
Yeah,
maybe I can see that. Yeah.
I mean, because I've known some Brits who were from London, and it's like if they're from that particular area of London where they kind of like shorten the T's and that kind of thing. Like that's what it sounded like to me. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's from Southeast London. That's what I got.
Yeah, well, we're American anyway. As long it's like it's English-ish.
Yeah, I'm just saying I can't wait to be slammed in the comments by our English viewers and the Australian viewers.
Well, yeah, viewers, if you are from England or Australia, if you have a better key on where his accent is, let us know. Put it in the comments below and educate us, because we want to know more. We don't want to sound stupid up here. I don't want to sound stupid.
But anyway, do you have any thoughts on the character Billy Butcher?
William Butcher.
Because what I like about him is that, again, he's like the prime, because he's kind of presented as the protagonist of the show. But is he really? Because he has that dark side, and I love that. Again, it's sort of the same thing they do with the Seven is, and I think they do it even because the Seven, some members like Homelander are arguably definitely leaning more towards the dark. Whereas Billy, I think he kind of sits in that middle. He straddles the edge, and I think that's what I really loved about this character.
Well, I mean, to me, I have to agree that Billy is one of my favorite characters on the show. But again, also Carl Urban. Do we need to say any more? But he does. Again, I mentioned in this section before, the introduction that Billy does. I mean, while Huey is kind of in that super low point, Billy walks out as like the answer to all of his problems. Don't you want to have some revenge? You want to put these into place? He leads them out. He does that beautiful sweeping discussion out in the middle of town, showing all the billboards and everything. I mean, it's kind of like, the ringmaster hero has arrived. And he plays it well. He's got his badge. He's got his stuff. I think he was an FBI agent, and then he got kicked out from pushing on the Seven too far. By the way, there, Mark, I think they did mention something about that. But I mean, and he plays it out so well. And then at the end, after they finally knocked Translucent down, and he's like, "Come on, just call the cops. You're all right." And he's like, I may not have been totally, honest about that part. And you're right. It's just like the Seven. He builds up as this image, and then suddenly, especially the whole next episode, when we're introducing Frenchie, who was another character, I really liked it. He had a heart, and I appreciate that. You see how much that he is just bullshitting and manipulating and lying. So I was like, oh, I've got this down, and then he'll go up and try try some other BS over here, and then bring it back like, oh, no, they said it wouldn't work out because I'm not getting what I want out of it. I mean, they play him out just beautifully in that. And he has that constant smile and confidence. He's confident even when he has no idea what he's doing. He plays that role very well. And yeah, I think Billy definitely my favorite character. Frenchie probably maybe underneath that, just because, like I said, he's got a heart, and I appreciate that.
Well, one of my other favorite characters, and this is something we haven't touched on at all, Starlight.
Oh,
Starlight, yeah. and I like her because, I like growing up in big town New York City. Every now and then you come across someone who is from the Midwest or some place that is definitely not one of these cosmopolitan areas of the United States. They come here and it's like, oh yeah, I have all these hopes and dreams, and then you just kind of watch their soul get crushed as they come to the reality of, yeah, this ain't what you saw on TV. But the fact that she was like, okay, I am not going to let this get me down. I am still going to push forward. She comes to the realization that not only was her life a lie, but, that she's basically been used as a prop. She's just like, you know what? I'm not going to allow myself to be used anymore. And I applaud the writing of the character because of that. In this day and age where we have a lot of people kind of like, there's the one side of people feeling like female characters are getting pushed to the forefront kind of at the expense of male characters, and then there are some who feel like female characters don't get enough agency of their own in order to show them going through adversity and coming out on the other side as better characters. I think this is probably, to me personally, one of the best representations in a while of a female character who started at a low point and then worked her way up, and to me kind of stood on top as someone that should be, developed further and watched, and watched grow.
Well, and they don't put her in a place where she's got to be saved at any point either, which I think was something that was really done, because you're right. Yeah, that refreshing, just innocent attitude coming into the world. I mean, it gives us our alternate perspective of the outside of what we expect these heroes to be, and the really kind of horrors of actually dealing with them. And she does have a great arc. And yeah, I appreciate the fact that what she gets from Huey isn't a savior in any way, shape, or form. In fact, sometimes, she's the one that's kind of putting him into place. But just think that there's some other human that's making mistakes and trying to get through that. From an emotional standpoint, she can gather some strength. But at no point does she need to be saved by any other of the characters. And I think that right there is a great representation. When she steps up, it's about to go down. The minute that she shows up at the end there and kind of saves everyone's bacon, is she's taken that power and position.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I saw a lot of reviews that on the show, and most of them, if they said anything negative, it was always about Starlight. A lot of people pointed to her as the low point of the show or the weak point of the show, and I totally disagree with that. I don't, and they particularly pointed out her relationship with Huey and thought, that wasn't done very well. But I totally disagree. I thought the it is a bit serendipitous that they just happened to meet like that. But if you move past that, I don't really have an issue with that. You move past that, their relationship was actually, I think, a strength of the show. Because as you were saying, I like the twist on that she was kind of the savior, the dominant one, the one with superpowers in that relationship. But I like how you really felt. I mean, I guess I could see this point of view because we start the show with Huey losing his girlfriend, so it seems kind of like halfway through for him to get another girlfriend seems kind of like pushing that aside. But I actually thought they handled that well. I thought they handled that well, and I thought I totally bought like his why he liked her, particularly the scene where they were at the fake thingy or whatever, and she had her meltdown on stage, and he was like totally supporting her. Like you really felt that these two connect. So I disagree with the criticism.
Yeah, and you got to think about it. You know, in a world where she's been thrust into the spotlight, right, and the only thing she wants now, especially after her first experience with the people that she's looked up to ever since she was a kid, is for her to go through this trauma, for her to, you know, meet someone who's just a regular guy who knows nothing about her and wants to get to know her just as a normal girl and not, you know, some famous icon. You know, that to me was the thing that I liked about it, because, you know, that's how a lot of relationships are built, kind of organically, when it's just two people sitting down having a conversation and being able to come to some commonality and see where they're going to try to grow from there. So, I mean, I don't understand how that could possibly be a low point in any kind of situation, but, you know, whatever.
Well, I think it serves an important. I mean, it's important too, because a lot of this show actually is about relationships. You know, whether it be the loss of relationship initially with Robin, the strength of the relationship that he develops on with Annie, with Starlight, but you've also got Frenchie and the Japanese girl who's named Kimiko.
Yeah,
right there. So. You've got Billy and his wife. You know, and the whole emotional impact of losing that. Even with Homelander, you have the emotional kind of psychopathic response that you have from possibly not being raised by a loving environment and being raised in a laboratory, and the effects that has. So relationships are super integral in with the show, and showing that you have a strong relationship that can build and better each of the people involved, Huey and Annie. I think it's important for everyone else, especially for someone like Billy, who hates all soups, but now has to start to acknowledge that, hey, Kimiko's kind of okay. She's helping us out, and she's a soup, and Frenchie connects with her. Mm-hmm. And for Huey, you know, hey, Starlight actually comes in and saves some bacon and does the right thing. You know, even surprising that Huey was willing to save A-Train at the end, as opposed to letting him die, despite the effects it'll have off of that. You can see where those positive aspects of those relationships comes in. And I think that's really important to show. So you don't have just humans versus soups. It's good people versus bad people, which is what it really should be about anyway.
Yeah, I thought another thing I wanted to point out is that I went to look up Kimiko's name on IMDb to see if that was her name, but it has her listed as the female.
Yeah.
So that must be, maybe that was what she was called in the comic book.
In the early episode summaries, she's always referred to as the female. And I think at the end, once we get her name, that it says the female, now known as Kimiko, you know, sort of changes that.
Well, anyway, I want to sort of start wrapping things up here, and I want to get into, I know Donnie said he didn't have any, but I want to get into maybe a weak part of the season, something that he thought didn't work very well, which I know I touched on spoiler-free, but I want to touch on something that's more spoiler-filled. And for me, I want to talk about the Deep. For me, he was the one character, like, he was okay at the start, like the thing with the sexual harassment, I thought that was twisted and fucked up, but it was a great way to sort of thrust the situation into just how fucked up these superheroes are. But towards the middle of the season, like the thing with him, like I liked most of the humor in the show, but the thing with him with the dolphin, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of an animal lover, but I just did not find that funny. To me, it seemed a bit goofy. I'm like, as soon as I saw that, I bet he's going to slam one of the brakes and the dolphin's going to fly through and die. And that's what happened. And to me, it was just too predictable. It was too much of an easy gag. And then all this stuff towards, when I talked about in my spoiler-free, I talked about how the show dragged towards the end. I was speaking specifically on the scenes with the Deep. I was like, I don't care about this character. He's like in Ohio or something. And I was like, I don't care about him. I want to get back to the other stuff. I don't know what your thoughts on that was.
Well, look, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. I thought they were going to do a little bit more development with him, after the incident with the dolphin, and then after the incident with the lobster, um, and him shaving his head, and the sexual encounter that he had with the girl who was putting her fingers inside of his gills and all that, which that to me was kind of crazy because wasn't expecting him to have gills there at all. So that was that was a little like wow. But again, I think this is one of those things where they were setting up his character so that we can get maybe a redemption arc out of him in the next season. So that if yeah, I have no problem with your complaint about the character and how it seemed not to really go anywhere during the current season. So I mean, I'll agree with you in terms of that. If I had to pick a low point for myself, it would probably be the storyline A-Train and his girlfriend. Only because it's like, yes, I understand they needed a way in to infiltrate the Seven that wasn't really going to bring any attention. I was hoping to see her character fleshed out a little more, because I understand what they were doing in terms of like saying, okay, she was kind of on top at one point. She fell off as far as popularity is concerned. A-Train is there, like I got to keep my image, so I can't tell anybody that we're dating. And I guess she's supposed to be like their X-23 or Wolverine or something like that. Yeah, and I mean, like, I think they could have done just a little more with her character. I'm not exactly sure what. I have to go back and watch it and maybe see like what I would have added to it. But yeah, that was the thing for me. That was a little bit like, okay. I see that she did it. I wish she got just a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. Like, I didn't have any issues with that, but I think there were moments towards the start that I was like, why are we spending so much time with this character? So I definitely do see where you're coming from. But come on, that face-sitting scene, that was another one of those scenes that was just like so fucked up, so out there. And I saw, I was like, what? They actually went there. That was insane.
Yeah.
And also, another scene I was watching just before coming on was the scene where A-Train killed her. Like, that was fucked up. Like, I think I saw that coming, the way he was like, oh, everything's going to be great now, whatever. And it was just,
now that you're hiding out in Havana,
yeah,
track you down. Yeah, that's never a good sign when you got to run like that. I could see, I did think some of the deep stuff might have gotten dragged out a bit more. They spent a bit more time than expected to. To me, it was kind of interesting because I felt some sympathy for Deep as we got towards the end of the guy that was on top and is now in Sandusky, Ohio, cutting ribbons on water parks and things like that. That it's just down the fact that he gets the I wouldn't say justice, but the irony of him effectively being sexually assaulted, which is sort of what caused his whole fall after that too. I think it was just kind of an interesting way to put him and have that be sort of our visual character of possibly somebody who is paying the price for who he was and maybe looking for some redemption on his part. And again, I'm not necessarily being sympathetic or anything like that. I was feeling for him at the end. Oddly, one of the moments, especially rewatching, that stood out to me, and it's in the midst of one of the most intense, great scenes, is in the airplane, actually, when they walk all the way back, there's always a door right next to the captain's cab. They seem to walk through the whole airplane just to give us that emotional goodbye moment. And that was one thing that stood out to me so much rewatching. It was kind of like, okay, you've messed up. Why don't you just exit the plane now? Why are you walking all the way to the back, which isn't even where they had come in? They came in like in the middle of the aircraft and then walked all the way out to the back. So it was, especially on a rewatch, it was one of those that just stood out to me. I know while I was there, it gave us that strong emotional bit. And I think that that was important for this scene and for everything else. But yeah, it was one of those just odd things. Was like, there's a door in the front of the plane. Why did you just walk through the whole plane? Why didn't you just leave then?
Well, yeah. Well, I know what you're saying. For me, I'm willing to 100% forgive them for that because it works so well dramatically.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's effective. It just stood out to me when I saw it.
I didn't even notice until you pointed it out. But once you point it out, yeah, you do have a point. But I don't care.
I can't unsee it now. But no, overall, like I said, it's small stuff, and I see where you both guys are coming from with those scenes. But I felt there was very little wasted throughout all of this, and I thought that every little scene played out in some way later on. Whether you see the kind of the dragged out scenes of what's her name, who's I'm forgetting now, whatever the main girl at Voight. Elizabeth Shue's character. Stillwell. Thank you. I've got it in my notes. The whole time with her kid and how much that annoys him, and the kind of all the voyeur stuff and the kind of Homelander and her. Some of that felt a little bit more played into, but it made sense why they set all those up for his personal betrayal later on, and while he's so against this kid, and then the irony of that, finding out that he has his own, and now he has this whole pride and expectation of it. I found most of those scenes really paid off. So anything that I was a little frustrated with made more sense as the scene as the season sort of played itself out. So I think it got me pretty forgiving in all of those moments.
Well, speaking of the end, before we wrap up, can we talk about the ending?
Okay.
Because for me, I thought that was, for one, coming to the realization that really the big bad of this whole thing is Homelander. Like, the guy who you would think is he kind of comes off as just a regular jock, right? Yeah, he blew up the plane with the senator, and Elizabeth Shue's character is like, you idiot, I got the Senate Appropriations Committee, that the ones that kind of give us money and fund us, here. And I kind of needed that guy. And now, they're not going to be focused on what I want out of it because they're too focused on this guy's death now. And then the whole thing with the supers, with finding out that there's a bunch of other ones. Yeah, you would have thought it was, I forget what the corporation's name is, but you would have thought it was them that were doing it in order to help strengthen their position and be able to get, the military contract to go around the world and basically police the world. And it's like, nope, Homelander the entire time, and that's why A-Train has been running around the world like a madman, and him actually causing that tragedy in the beginning of the first episode. All Homelanders do, and then at the very end where he takes Billy Butcher to see his wife, it's one of those kind of punches to the gut, because here we have Billy Butcher this entire time thinking that Homelander had raped and killed his wife, and it's like, nope. Like, it's seeming like she slept with him willingly, and then afterwards, like when she found out she was pregnant, they kind of approached her and was like, look, Yeah, we know Homelander's kind of a psychopath. We want to raise our own kind of new Homelander in a nurturing environment. We're going to have you take him off the side. But unfortunately, your husband is going to have to think you're dead. And it seems like, unless I'm, reading something into this that you guys may think is different, it seemed like she was a very willing participant in this whole affair and really didn't care how it affected Billy uh, in the long run.
I think
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Yeah, now my take on it is that I don't think we know yet the degree of how willing she was. I mean, she was definitely willing to some degree because she went with it and she did it and she kept her the fact that she was alive secret, not just from her husband, for her whole family. But it seemed so. Like I get the impression though that was kind of part of the deal. Like in order to raise a kid, she had to agree to that. So we don't know to what degree. Like she didn't care what Billy thought. I mean, because maybe he was eating her up inside. I think that's something that will be explored in season 2.
Well, yeah, it's a cliffhanger. It's supposed to get us to ask all of these questions. It's doing its job perfectly because, yeah, we looked at the whole pursuit that Billy has had this whole time, his whole hatred against Homelander may be entirely falsely based. She may have willingly had sex with him. Or not like he's a very reliable source of information. Yeah, and true. Usually you don't exit a room half-dressed, putting clothes on from a willing standpoint. If it's willing, you clean yourself up, then you walk out like nothing happened. That could be read a bit more like
you're sober.
I'm just saying, they have left this, I think, very well both ways. You also don't really see a response from an emotional standpoint for her to eat. I mean, she looks like she's a little terrified of seeing Homelander, but she's relatively blank. She's surprised to see Billy for sure at that moment. Was it a but they don't dwell that long. So is it happy to see? Is it terrified to see? Is it, oh my God, what could happen here? Have we been discovered? Is my son going to be taken? Am I going to be laser beamed to death? I mean, I think they left that in an interesting, in an intentional way to give us these questions because, yeah, we don't know if her encounter with Homelander was consensual or not. He says it was. He is not a reliable person. He lies all the time, though not usually about odd stuff like this. I mean, it seems a little odd about that. Her response, yeah, did she willingly go with? Is it just to save the kid? Is it the fact that if Homelander found out, she would be in danger? They needed to monitor her. They couldn't risk the fact of Billy letting stuff out. So how willingly did she go? Did she make that choice to save Billy in her own sense? I mean, I think that's why I said I think it was a perfect way to leave because it sounds like the beginning of a whole new section of the story. It leaves us with these questions where you could go kind of either way with this, but it certainly undermines everyone's expectations of what their motivation is. Billy's motivation is now gone because she's still alive, and Homelander had nothing to do with her disappearance, really, outside of fathering the kid. And Homelander here now looks like someone who's been betrayed his whole life and is now just looking for a family. Could this be the beginning of his redemptive arc? No, he's a psychopath. But you can go in all of these interesting directions, and I think that's sort of the great part of leaving it at that story point.
Well, real quick, I just want to say, look, the only reason why I think that as far as the sexual encounter, like that, she was a willing participant in that, is because I don't think that Homelander would have brought Billy there. Because remember, Billy's whole narrative has been you raped my wife and then you murdered her. So for him to bring him there is like, nope, I didn't rape your wife. Trust me. And oh yeah, also she has my kid and she's raising him. Because he wants to really rub that in Billy's face, like, nope, you've been on this quest this entire time for no reason at all. Thank you very much.
That's an excellent point. I will concede that. That is an excellent point.
Yeah, but I still think it's a little open ended. But I do agree with you. It's probably leaning that would definitely, as Fandom pointed out in the chat, that would actually be more powerful to find. And that's something about the ending that really worked, is that it's the whole entire season. The main, like, I don't know if he's the main character, but one of the main characters' main motivation, you find out, completely flipped on its head, that he was wrong the whole time. The whole thing was about him getting revenge on Homelander for raping and killing his wife. You find out at the very end he didn't in fact do that. So that to me, and now I think it's a great time to segue into what I want to talk about. What do you hope to see in season 2? What do you expect to see? What do you want to see in season 2? And to me, I am very open, Billy Butcher's a huge question mark to me, and I'm very excited. I don't have any specific expectations, but I'm very excited to see where they take, because they completely took the rug totally right out from under this character, took away his total motivation, so he could end up going in an entirely new direction. He could become like a supervillain. He could become totally different. I could become friends with Homelander. I doubt that. But anything like it's really interesting to see this total. And also, I like that, getting back to the ending a little bit, I like how the Homelander, he could have killed Billy easily. He kept him alive to fuck with him. It's like the way, like, cruel people, like, you know, abuse animals or pets or whatever. They just like fucking with him. And that side of it was pretty sinister. But anyway, so do you guys have any thoughts on season 2? What do you hope to see? What you want to see? Darren, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I would like to know a little bit more about Mallory and her whole story. Like I said, I think that's going to get into it as the origin of the boys, because Mallory was the original founder of it. And since she's the one that showed Billy and kind of weaved that your wife was raped by Homelander story, how much does she actually knows? Is she the one that's been manipulating Billy the whole time and lying to? Is she getting revenge? And also, what happened with her grandkids? How did that go bad and sort of split up the group? So that is one thing that I'm really hoping to dive into a little bit more and find some of that background. And yeah, I'm excited to see which direction Billy Butcher is going to go from here. You know, is he still going to distrust the Supes? Is he going to distrust everybody that was behind him? Is he going to go through some sort of existential crisis and abandon everyone, and they've got to go and pull him up? I mean, I think that might be less exciting, but still, you know, there are a lot of directions that they sort of can go in, and it's the perfect point is they're all burned and they're on the run, so there has to be kind of some balance point. You know, does Homelander now be in the position to go, all right, guys, I'll forgive you all for stuff. I've got my son here. And does this sort of reset the clock on that? Again, I think that would be sort of a less interesting bit. But I think whenever you have your heroes on the run with limited resources, I think that always makes things much more interesting from a storyline standpoint, because there's a lot more impetus for them to move. And yeah, really, I just want to find out what did happen between Billy's wife and Homelander and all that. So I think those two main storylines, I think I feel that's going to be a big focus for next season.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely have to find out, you know, what's going on with the boys on the run now, you know, because Mother's Milk, I think they're going to dive more into his story now that his wife is like, nope, don't ever want to see you again. You know, you have, you know, Kimiko, who we need to learn more about, you know, who she is and how she plans on kind of rebuilding a life for herself. The Deep, I want to see his character evolve more. I want to see where they're going to take him. Butcher, I think in order for Butcher to be interesting, we need to see him at his low point, because where we see him in season 1 is not his low point. We saw, you know, his, him coming out of his earlier low point, whatever. But we need to see him now that he's got the realization that he's been lied to for all this time, and his big quest has basically been based on a lie. And it's like, well, how do you come back from that? What is there left for you to even do at this point? And we need to see, Father Homelander. How is Homelander going to be as a father? Is he going to try to make up for some of the wrongs that were done to him, or is he just so irredeemable that he is going to attempt to make his son as maniacal as he has become over the years? So that's what I'm hoping for season 2.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely something I'm really looking forward to see how they take. I hope that Homelander doesn't corrupt the poor boy, but that's just that's just me. But it's something interesting. But one other thing that I'm really looking forward for season 2 that I hope they explore more is, as I said before, Queen Maeve, how the impact of what happened and the plane affects her. And you bring up some points that maybe, and I've heard other people talk about how maybe the Deep is actually going to turn, and he's going, because he's being treated like shit right now, he's actually going to join like the boys' side. I'd actually would rather see Queen Maeve rather than him turn, because I think she's definitely, you had that thing with, she has to hide her own sexuality too because of the corporate nature, and I think they did a really good job playing on this character and the impact it has, but I don't think we got enough of it. So I want more of it in season 2. I just hope that they're saving it for season 2. That's going to factor in a lot more into the main storyline there.
Well, and also with Starlight now not necessarily being exposed, that she's still kind of working from the inside, but now seeing, the corruption that's endemic, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how she works in, and that might create. They started making a nice little connection between her and Maeve, and I'd like to see that actually sort of explored a little bit more. Also curious if they're going to bring back Lamplighter, because the Senate had lost its one. He retired, which is why they brought in Starlight. But now that, of course, Translucent's gone, the Deep is off in Sandusky. Are they going to want to bring back, kind of an old school player? And so do we get to see some new soups entering the picture?
It's been a while since I've seen season 1, like a month or 2. I can't remember. Did they ever publicly acknowledge that Translucent was dead?
No, he's on a mission.
Oh, okay.
He's on a mission, so they can still play with that in any way that they want. But
I wonder if they do, if they're going to bring someone else into the 7, maybe another new.
Well, Lamplighter was the one behind Mallory's grandkids getting burned. What did they say? Is Lamplighter burned them so bad they couldn't even find dental records.
Right.
So it would make sense to bring him back as an old school coming in to fill in, because there's a war against the soups, which they can again blame the boys up against. And that would play into the whole Mallory story, as then we could get a development of that character as well. So I have a feeling we might be seeing more of that character, at least in some standpoint. Or just seeing the character. I can't see more of him because we haven't seen the character at all before. So, yeah.
All right, cool. So I think we covered this subject good enough, so I'm ready to end the podcast here. So if you guys have any last thoughts you want to throw out there before we sign off about the boys, anything else you just want to throw out real quick? Nope.
Nope. Again, just good show. And I thought that they worked well showing the reality of this type of world. And even with villains, what fandom mentions here in the chat, that of course, Translucent has a kid that gives a nice shocking moment with Huey when he finds that out, thinking that he's just this bad guy.
Yeah.
And I like those kind of, again, I like that dichotomy where you're like, yeah, this guy's a douche. Oh, but he's got a good side to him. Oh, this guy's an awesome. But he is secretly, a child murderer or something. They have these really well developed characters, and I like them inhabiting the world that way.
Okay, one thing before we go, Fandom Desane asks us what was the best death. So let's enter this one before we go. The best, I think I already talked about the best death was the face sitting. Sorry. That was just out there. But anyway, you guys have a different answer for that?
I liked Stillwell's death at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Right into the eyes and just sort of melted in that way. Because again, it was shocking. Was not expecting it to go. Was not expecting to lose Elizabeth Shue by the end of the first season, playing a very important role there. So I think it was kind of a little shocking that he did that, but perfectly in character. And again, just that whole right into the eyes and melting it was very impactful. So yeah, the brain splurting was probably number one, but I like that one as well.
You know what? I'm gonna go with Translucent because because he definitely deserved it. You know, him being a damn creep in the bathroom.
Oh
My God, man. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, to the point where Maeve knew that he was there after a while, and she's just like, "Yo, come on, you damn perv." So yeah, nah, he got what he deserved. So yeah, you know, screw that guy.
All right, cool. So we'll go ahead and end this now. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for sticking with us for this, and anyone watching in the archives. Thank you so much. Anyway, if you just want to give a quick shout out where people can find you, what you're up to, Don, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, my name is Don Willie. You can find me at a Don of Ice and Fire, where eventually I will put out a new video. I know people have been waiting forever for that. Look, I do have some stuff in the works. I just need to actually pull the trigger on it. But Mark, again, as always, thank you for having me, and hopefully we'll find something else to discuss very soon. Darren, as always, you know, and take it away.
Yeah, I'm Darren Jakes. You can catch me here on YouTube at D's Reviews or on Twitter and Instagram at Darren Jakes. That's right there in the little descriptor. I am in the midst of the final season of Preacher, which is awesome. A great mix of comedy and violence and just over-the-top ass-kicking, which is awesome. So, yeah, we're wrapping up the fourth season right now. Got about 4 episodes left. And then, of course, Walking Dead is returning in October. Plus, we got, Mr. Robot Season 4 comes out exact same day, October 6th on a Sunday. And then later on, Disney Plus, I'm going to be reviewing so much stuff off of Disney Plus, Mandalorian, on November 12th. So a lot of stuff coming up. Please come and check out my channel if you haven't. And Mark, as always, really appreciate you asking me on here. Always a blast chatting about this stuff. And Don, always fun chatting with you too. So I really look forward when we get a chance to get together and dive into shows like this.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a blessing. Thank you guys for coming. So if you first time checking out my channel, my name is Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. At the moment, I'm covering mostly Lost and Star Trek episodes that have, retro reviews that aired a long time ago, but I'm quite busy with that. I think I'm up to season 3 of Enterprise, and God, I love season 3 of Enterprise. Hate the first 2 seasons, but I love the third one. But anyway, covering that, and I'll be covering that for a while. I'll be covering Mr. Robot, as Darren mentioned, when that comes out. And definitely The Expanse. I'll be doing so many videos on The Expanse when that comes out in December. Can't wait for that. So I'm this bit disappointed because I wanted to cover shows like The Mandalorian or maybe His Dark Materials or something like that, but everything is coming out at the same time. So I'll just be too flooded and I won't be able to. So maybe we'll have to slip in the video about The Mandalorian or something here and there or something like that, because otherwise we'll be able to cover it. And the Picard show comes out in January. I'm looking forward to that personally. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and check us out, and I'll see you later.